Hey everyone, welcome back. In this video, we're going to rig the eyelashes. If you find these videos helpful, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. As always, if you want to follow along, you can download the workshop library for this tutorial series in Mansur-Rig's ArtStation profile. I left the link below. Let's deconstruct and keep going with the rig. I'll unhide the eyelashes faces I've hidden in the previous video. For the eyelashes, we're not going to be using another module, but an existing feature within the CurveZip B module we used in the eyelids. Let's open the eyelids module settings and locate that feature. It's called Attachment Curve. I use the name attachment to avoid using component-specific name, but it will usually mean eyelashes. In this model, we have quite a unique scenario, where our eyelashes are not standard. They only exist for the top eyelid, and they don't spread across the entire eyelid. Also, the mesh used here is quite stylized, and it offers a perfect example to show how dynamic block modules are and how they allow for these non-standard cases. It goes without saying we're only going to be using the upper attachment curve feature for this model. Let's open the dropdown and take a look at its attributes. Don't let the low amount of attributes be a witness of this feature's ability. This feature will generate another layer of joints from the main joint structure for the upper or lower sections. The extra layer will always follow the main behavior of the module, but will also allow for extra animatable controls and channels to transform the new secondary joints layer on top of the main one. It might sound confusing, but it will make much more sense once we see it. Also, notice that the doUpperAttachment attribute is a joint structure member, which means the entire joint structure for this module will be rebuilt once I change this attribute. So let's export the skin and ngSkin layers so we can restore them after we update the module. As a first step, we need to inspect the eyelashes mesh and decide how many joints do we want to use in order to deform it. Of course, the more joints we create, the more accurate will the behavior be. Well, within reason. Creating 100 joints here would not be of benefit. Looking at my mesh, I see roughly 9 vertical divisions across. I'll go with 12 joints, a slightly higher value than that, since I want to relax my skin and make sure I get a smooth behavior out of this feature. I'll go back to my module settings and check the doUpperAttachment attribute and set the number of joints to 12. I'll update my settings and inspect my updated joint structure. Now I can see that a new joint layer was created on top of the upper eyelid section. I also see 2 new custom guides visible that describe the start and end position of the attachment layer. I'll quickly find these joints, labeled as Upper Attach, in the outliner. As requested, I have 12 of them. I'll temporarily input these joints into a new display layer and set a bright color for it, just to see them better as I manipulate them. Now the default for this feature is to be spread across the entire eyelid, which in my opinion is the most common scenario. Although in this case, the eyelash mesh is partially covering the eyelid. So what do we need to do from this point to improve? This layer includes guide manipulation channels so we can choose the bind position for this layer. These channels are located on the Start Position custom guide. We have a few attributes here that we can tweak in order to improve the bind pose for our joint placement. Now you must be wondering, why aren't the joints spread evenly across the eyelid? The reason for that is the fact that the attachment curve sampling mode is set to parametric, which is dependent on the spread of the input joints. This is slightly difficult to explain in short, but all you need to know is that parametric sampling is the only method that will ensure that the eyelashes won't swim when animating the eyelid. And since the edge loops around the eyelids are not perfectly spread, the default spread for the attachment joints aren't even as a result. But we will now take a look at what we can do to improve, given this limitation, since we cannot expect for the eyelid topology to be perfect. The first attribute we're going to be looking at is the attachment length, which is currently set to 1. Since our eyelashes aren't covering the eyelid, we can easily lower the length to fit our needs. In case our eyelashes mesh wasn't starting at the root of the eyelid, we could use the attachment offset value to offset our joints away from the root, but in this case it isn't necessary. Below, we have 3 attributes that will help us spread the joints slightly better. It isn't necessary to understand how exactly these are different from each other. The best way is simply to play with them until you're happy with the result. This process is solely dependent on the given model. There is simply no easy way to predict the best values for these attributes. Before I construct, let me quickly restore our skin cluster using Blocks Deformation tab tools and ngSkinTools import tool. Now I can continue to constructing the puppet and inspecting the result controls and behavior. I now have a few more controls for the eyelashes, which are partially slaved. They will always follow the main eyelid behavior, but they provide an extra layer for flexibility when animating. We can rotate the eyelashes and adjust their position across the eyelid in many different ways, which in this specific case is extremely important. To best understand how robust and flexible this setup is, let's first imagine it doesn't exist and skin the eyelashes to match the eyelid's deformation. The first obvious problem is that the eyelashes topology doesn't match the eyelid's topology, so we know for a fact it will never match the eyelid's deformations. For the sake of demonstration, let's just ignore this problem. When I play around with the eyelid controls, the eyelashes do move with it, which I'd call decent, right? But nothing more. Also, let's close the eye and take a look again. I can only assume every animator will say that this isn't working well, since the visual result is off. The eyelash mesh should cover the eyelid when closed, even though it is partially covering it when it's open. And to be honest, I would definitely agree. So still considering we have no extra setup here, what would we normally do to implement the animator's request? That won't be an easy task. We could try blend shapes, but that will only work in a single position. What about when I do this or this? That will be quite vulnerable. We could also attempt a complicated manual setup to try and implement this behavior, but again, that will be quite vulnerable. And it will be a pain to update once a model change comes, and we all know it will come sooner or later, probably sooner. So considering all of that, let's reskin the eyelashes mesh to our new attachment joints and compare. I'll skin the eyelashes only using procedural actions to try and demonstrate a least amount of effort scenario. Using ngSkinTools, I'll create a new layer and assign closest joint influences. Then relax the skin weights of the layer a bit. First, let's compare the deformation. In my opinion, this is much better. Well, my biased opinion, that is. The eyelashes follow the eyelids almost exactly and they maintain shape quite well. Now let's use the extra features of this layer to see how easy they are to control. Lastly, let's try and solve the previous issue we had when closing the eye. That was quite easy, right? And I hope it looks as intuitive as it is to use. Remember, this is only a skin cluster deformation. All of the rotation controls aren't very useful in this case, but consider an eyelash mesh that extends out. The animator could pose the eyelashes very quickly and very easily, which again is quite a difficult behavior to achieve normally. I'll clean up the scene and just like that, our eyelashes are rigged and ready to go. I strongly encourage you to open this workshop and inspect all of the features we created so far. There are many of them, and it is quite a challenge demonstrating and explaining them all in these videos. Experience them yourselves, and most importantly, make sure to let me know what you think can be better, or what I can improve on. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. Let's conclude this video here and continue to the next one. Please like, share and subscribe. I'll see you on the next video.